welcome to Healthcare Hour with Colleen Qvist. Thank you so much for joining me. I know that you are listening to me from all over the world, and today we have a guest who's Australian, and I'm going to introduce you to her in a moment. As you know, what is this show all about? It's all about healthcare professionals. It's about us understanding that they're people, they have to juggle a whole bunch of things, and unfortunately, they often put themselves last. And so they don't get to ever go to the bathroom or to eat or to see families. And their responsibility is always on looking after their patients. It's also about us improving the relationship between the healthcare professional and the patient, and of course the patient's family. And then it's also for us to understand that as people, we get to be patients. And often we don't want to be patients, but somewhere along the line, we get to be patients. So are we taking responsibility and ownership for our own health? Are we sitting on the couch with like a sack of potatoes? Or are we actually playing an alive version of it? Or are we just handing it over to other people? Of course, healthcare also has got leadership in it. It's often that healthcare professionals, I think, sometimes are too busy saving lives to actually work out, okay, where's the leadership, what's happening? And of course, we know that globally, healthcare is not in a very good state from a systems point of view. So after the break, we're going to meet my guest, Maureen Kyne, and we're going to talk about a fascinating concept that she is a global expert on. But let's go for the break.
The Africa Center for Work-Based Learning is a professional development center for professionals who aim to improve their professional standing. This means that the learning programs we run are more than just academic programs. They are work-based programs that focus on leveraging your current experience as a professional to build your overall profile. A year down the line, the Africa Center for Work-Based Learning is developing into a preferred center for professional development in Pretoria, with 8 professional development faculties including accounting, teaching, entrepreneurship, as well as IT and many more. For more information, go to acwbl.org or dial +27 12 751 7608. The Africa Center for Work-Based Learning, where work is learning.
Welcome back. My guest today, as I said before the break, is Maureen Kyne, and she is a world-renowned expert on upward bullying, the covert systemic sabotage of leaders by those they lead. But let's say hello to you, Maureen, and find out about your background, because all my people here are people before they're experts.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here and talking to the healthcare professionals. I have a really strong affiliation with healthcare, that being my very first career as a nurse, and then leaving it and going into construction, and then coming back in another capacity as a supplier to healthcare. So I got to see healthcare through a very different lens to actually working on it. And then now in that third or fourth transition in my career, now setting up my own consultancy practice and working with healthcare professionals to address behaviour that is causing a huge lot of grief and angst for them. And in particular, over this last 5-6 years, I've seen such a transition from, employees being bullied down to actually employees being bullied up. And, I use that terminology of being that it's upward bullying. Others, have sort of other definitions for it, but it's where the subordinate is actually bullying, their leader, their manager, or those in a management role. And it's quite a very different form of bullying than what we traditionally have been accustomed to seeing.
So Maureen, explain, is it an individual that bullies upwards, or would you find that individuals get together and become the band?
I actually have got a very, very good metaphor that I use for this. And I often sort of say it's that single person as the sole soloist. And, where they see it's their mission to bring down their leader or leaders. And then they become a trio. And eventually, they become the conductor of a major orchestra. So, people, join a band, a three-person band or a 5 or 6-person band. But when it grows to being an orchestra, if you think about how a conductor, they don't say anything. There's just a movement of their body,
Yes.
their hands, their head, and people obey because they don't want to be out of tune. So this is how the gang is formed, or the mob. Some term it as mobbing, and that is the definition around this. But it is a mob. It is a gang, and I think if you think about it from a criminal perspective, when some of the behaviours are criminal that these people are exhibiting, it's a gang. Under the terminology of the law. So it's very intentional. So I think the interesting thing about it is that people get caught up in it and they fear the person who is the conductor of this orchestra. And so they'll join just out of, or follow on just out of peer pressure. And then there's others who intentionally join. So they become part of the henchmen. And so, they're the ones that you tend to see who are doing the dirty work. The conductor sits back
Just
and,
goes,
yes.
yeah.
And it's and I think the thing is that when people talk to me about what's going on, and they say, I can't work it out. And once they we talk for about an hour or so, and I start writing down all the names of the different people and what they're doing and things like that, and I said, that's your person, that's the conductor, and they go, oh my God, how did you pick it? But you start, it's just being able to identify where the variable or the various nuances are happening, the behaviours are happening, and sometimes it's not even actually straight within the workplace. It can be from the board, and in particular when we're looking at healthcare, it may be external providers that are actually, have their eye on this particular leader that they want to exit the organisation. And look, and I've worked with CEOs of health organisations who have been brought in to change, put in place, massive amount of change and even save the business, in some instances. And because they're trying to make change in an organisation where old behaviours have been entrenched for a very long period of time, they become the target very, very quickly of these of a conductor and of the henchmen that they've actually got involved. And I think the thing is, one of the things I see too is that in healthcare, they're very strong from a union representative as well. So, that's another arm that can be, part of that henchman. As a group, that's a hench. That group is a henchman over here. We may have external suppliers, providers, and that could be different medical people coming in to provide their services. And then you've got the other band from internally, within the organisation of band together. So when you sort of put these forces together, it's extraordinary. So if you look at the conductor's got the violinists over there. He's got the people on the bass.
The drums over here, the strings over there, and whoever else is in an orchestra.
In the mix. And I think until you can sort of start to sort of see where all of these players are, because that's what they are, they're players, and what impact have they got? What impact are they having? And what's the intention behind it?
Yeah.
What's the intention? Yes, they want to get that leader out, but there's other things in behind it that they want. And so if it's a union, it's their control over the EBA. Or the workplace conditions. And those workplace conditions are often written in the enterprise agreements. So then you start to think about all of those other underlying things, that root cause of why they're actually perpetrating these behaviours.
Yes. Yeah, so for all the leaders listening to us at the moment, I think it's understanding as well that it's not just standing up for your rights. It's taking your power beyond what is acceptable, and it's also ganging up on the person as opposed to just putting up a boundary.
Correct, correct.
Yeah,
And it's an inform, and I think the thing is that people sort of say they've got power. It's not that, yes, they have power, but it's an informal power. And
yeah,
I think that's we need to make sure that we're not labeling it, but we're actually giving it its a correct identification. So it's informal power. So if I'm to have a discussion, let's say that we're to get together, with the business and start to map out what we're going to do to start to take control back again, is that we need to be able to say, when we're having discussions with people, you've got informal power here, and that's not appropriate. And I think
yeah,
that's the thing is, or we're labeling it. That is mobbing. Your
yeah,
behavior is mobbing.
yeah.
It's
So
intentional.
it's pushing back also to say, no, that doesn't suit me. You want to change X, Y, Z. No, we don't. No, no, no.
No,
So it's almost,
but
I picture Survivor in this, we're going to outwit, outlast,
mm,
outstay kind of story of like, no, we're not doing it.
mm, true. And I think, and I look in the context of when we start looking at, bullying behavior and sexual harassment behavior, that's still happening, from a management level, from executive levels. We still have, a lot of sexual harassment taking place from in the medicine side of things within health. So we've got a whole range of inappropriate behaviors and unlawful behaviors
Yes.
happening within our healthcare system. And, upward bullying is part of it, and we need to be setting boundaries around how we expect people to show up for work and
Yeah.
how they're either contributing or contaminating to the behaviour. And I think they're two really powerful words that we need to be really thinking about. And if you're in a leadership role, you need to be able to articulate to a person that is exhibiting this behaviour, you're contaminating the
Yeah.
behaviour. You're contaminating the way that we do things. You're
Yeah.
contaminating an unsafe workplace.
Okay. All right. So let's go for a break. And then when we come back, we're going to look and see, okay, so the leader listening to us, what what should they be looking for? Maybe they've never heard of this upward bullying and they're going like, is that me? But let's go for
Mm.
a break.
How do you know the life of personal coach you're about to work with is who they say they are? How do you know if they can do the job? At the Africa Board for Coaching, Consulting and Coaching Psychology, we can tell you. So, before you share your secrets and spend your money, check with us first. Visit www.abccccp.com or call us on 012-751-7608. The ABCCP, the professional body for coaches.
Welcome back. You're listening to Healthcare Hour with Colleen Qvist. My guest today is Maureen Kyne, all the way from Australia, and she is talking to us about upward bullying. She is a global authority. She's a renowned expert on upward bullying. And we've just been talking about, normally we've had downward bullying, except of course it hasn't been called downward bullying. But I think the difference there is that the person has got the real power compared to the unauthorized power. But for people listening, like maybe the leader sitting here and going, upward bullying. Is there upward bullying in my company? Is there upward bullying in my team? What should they look for?
They're very simple things that we're looking for. So if people are coming into the workplace and all of a sudden you sort of walk perhaps into, the utilities room and you've got staff whispering, and you say, well, what are you talking about? And if they'll be talking about, they might stop talking. The moment you walk in, they're whispering, and you start and you walk in, and then there's this deadly silence.
Mm,
And you're thinking, obviously I'm not supposed to be in on this conversation, or I'm not supposed to be listening to this conversation. So that's it. That's like a little, say, warning sign.
little tweak. Yeah. Like,
Just that
oh,
tweak. Yeah,
yeah.
so just park it there for a moment. Sort of that's like a little sensor that's gone off. So just park that for a moment. And then there might be something like you've asked them to perhaps do an extra round, within the ward, and there's pushback as to why you want that done. Oh no, I haven't got time for that. Well, that's not what I asked. We've had a particular outbreak and in a particular area, and we want to do this particular process within or increase our vigilance around cleaning, and you get that pushback that they're not going to do it. Or you've sort of said to somebody, hey, can you actually go and check on, Mary Smith? I know that she's sort of been, sort of a little bit anxious about her treatment. And then you'll check in with them, say, an hour later and say, hey, have you checked on Mary Smith? Oh, no, you didn't tell me to do that. So they're gaslighting you.
Yeah. You start to second guess, like, did I tell her? Didn't I tell her?
Yeah.
I'm sure I told her.
Yeah. And you might be doing it on the run, like as you're sort of walking past, like, hey, can you just check on that? And an hour later or 2 hours later, no, you didn't ask me to do that. But what could have happened is that Mary Smith could have gone into, and had a cardiac arrest. And you thought, oh, did she go in and check on her? If she had have gone in and checked on her, she may have found, that she was at the pre-start of it or something like that. So it's those little pushbacks all of the time that are the warning signs.
Yes.
It's like going along, and if you're, driving along the road, and I think this is another really great metaphor, when you're driving along the road and all of a sudden you see a little small pothole as you're going to work. And then, you go through it and thought that wasn't too bad. A couple of days later, and after the trucks have been over it, it's got a little bit bigger. So that bump is a bit bigger again.
Yes.
After a couple of weeks in the storm, you hit that bump and it really hurts.
Yeah.
You damaged your car perhaps, so, rip the rims off it. So these are the things that when we think about that, in the context of work, is that that's what it's like. It's just that little bump first, but the longer we leave it, the bigger that bump is going to get, the bigger that hole is going to get. So it's making sure that you have this checklist, even if you have a little checklist in the back of your diary.
Checklist for each day of going, hang on, let me document.
Or even just a checklist, and we can provide that, is that look for those Chinese whispers. Look for that, oh, you didn't tell me that. Or, that type of pushback all of the time. And then you're going, gee, that's happening. And then it's not only happening from one person, it's 2 or 3 that are doing it. Oh, and they're the ones who are doing the Chinese whispers in the utilities room. So they are the warning signs that is happening. And I think the other key thing is that when we want to call out behavior, there's 2 aspects that, aspects that we bring to work. One is that we bring our behavior to work, and the other one is that we're task orientated. So if we've got to have a discussion to somebody around a task that hasn't been completed, make sure that you don't have mix up in that conversation, that you're having a discussion around their behavior. Separate the 2 discussions.
Yes.
Because what you want to do
was
is
not spoken to.
Absolutely. And then when you're addressing behavior separately, it's got its own identity. And then you're able to say, well, look, if we have to have this discussion again around this, we'll have to think about giving a warning. So it starts.
So what I'm also hearing then, Maureen, is that sometimes you, as you said, with using the pothole, that it's quite subtle. It's like little changes, little changes, little changes. And before you know it, you've got this giant cavern kind of story. And you go like, where did this come from? And then you fall in it. But it's also quite difficult to call out the behavior or call out what you're seeing, because it's like, no, you're imagining things now.
Well, I think the thing is that, one of the things that if you do notice that, let's say if you go into the pan room and then there's this silence, that there's Chinese whispers, just saying, hey guys, I hope you're not gossiping in here.
Yeah.
So you can use those little, gossiping's not acceptable. But I think the key thing is that we have you have meetings. And I think it's really important to put on your meetings a behaviour.
Yes.
It's so that, at the beginning of every meeting, you've got one, gossiping is unacceptable because it creates bad feelings for people. It could also create safety issues when we start gossiping about people, and particularly if you are in a particular town, people know one another outside of the workplace, and therefore those Chinese whispers end up external of the workplace and causing, issues sort of in people's home lives and things like that as well. So, and I think that's a really great way, when we talk about having those meetings or toolbox, sort of in safety, they call them toolbox talks here in Australia, is that we are able to say, this is the behaviour that we're going to concentrate on this week. So you pull something out of your bullying policy, or pull something out of your sexual harassment policy, sexism, that type of talk is not acceptable. And if you keep those things on the, sort of continual on the go, people know that you're going to call them out on that behaviour. And I think
so it's taking it off the paper into, no, we live our policies. We don't just have them written down.
Correct. And I think that's why policies fail a lot, is because people don't actually live and breathe them. It's not part of what they do every day, and it has to be part of what we do every day.
Yeah.
If you walk past somebody and you see something that's inappropriate, so say, hey, we actually don't do that here.
Yeah.
And you only can
It's
you
not
can
the
do
way
it
we
in a
behave.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do it in a way that's not threatening. And look, and I've worked in an environment where I was the only female in Canberra at the time in the building industry. And that was when I was only 36, it was a long time ago, actually. And
not so many, only like 10 years.
It only seems like yesterday, but it wasn't. Yeah. But the thing was, it was when, sexual harassment behavior was there on the top.
Yeah.
I just say, hey, guys, cut it out. And so, but you did it in a way that you didn't feel like that you were threatening them, but you were just part of the conversation. And then all of a sudden they go, oh. And then that it stopped. And then that respect, there was a huge amount of respect that was built up. And I think that's what we all have, that ownership of how do we engage every day to create that safe workplace. We're contributing by saying that behaviour is not acceptable. Just what I heard there, that's really not acceptable. Don't have to bring policy in it. You're addressing the behaviour, and don't just say, you said, the behaviour, because what you're doing is you're addressing that behaviour that you just did was not acceptable. And so that
it's also not waiting for it to get to HR, or waiting for it to get to the board, or waiting for it to, it's like your colleague who actually saying, no. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the thing is that, particularly when you look at healthcare, when you think of the range of age of people within in a healthcare environment, you're thinking from your specialists to surgeons, they're in their 50s and 60s, 70s and 80s in some situations. So you have that really well-respected profession sort of sitting there. And then we've got people who are coming in as 17-year-olds, as personal care assistants, young women, young men. So we have this huge disparity from age to, from the beginning of
from your 70s to your 80 pluses.
Absolutely. And then intermingling all of the time. So you've got people who are cleaners. And I was in a healthcare facility just recently, and the girl said to me, one of the young girls said to me, or young ladies, she said, I'm just the cleaner. And I said, do you realise how important you are to this establishment?
Yeah. Let's see this establishment work without being clean.
we close. People get sick. People die. So you are such an integral part of this establishment, and I appreciate how well you keep this place clean.
Yeah.
And I think that's the respect that we need to have, and look at that contribution that each role is making to the organisation. And if we're able to look at that in that fair and respectful manner, we're going to have a much better outcome overall, and people aren't going to buy into, the insubordinates getting together
Yes.
to create this mob.
Mm.
Because what actually happens in some establishments, depending on the size, the healthcare establishment, it may only have, say, 150 staff overall, but it's still got a board, still got external people coming
Yeah.
in. What I find in those type of organisations is that this group of people will get together and they get to the board. So therefore, they've actually manipulated the board into believing what they want them to believe.
Yeah.
And they're
Believing
making
the narrative that they've set up as the conductor.
correct, and they've made it quite dangerous for the CEO or that small exec team.
Yeah. An example I've come across recently is where a manager said, oh, no, they used to have meetings. And I said, well, what happened to the meetings? No, people decided they couldn't come to them. So he stopped having meetings. And you go like, well, okay. Yeah.
Who is actually in control here?
Exactly. And I'm saying, okay, well, let's not have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. But if you believe the meeting's important from a communication point of view, or this is what we do, this is how this team works, then there's no, well, no, it doesn't suit me.
Absolutely.
No, I think not. I won't be there. Yeah.
And so that goes back to the task. So that's the reality, that the meeting is a task. And it's a requirement. So then you're able then to say, well, if you're not going to attend the meeting, well, then obviously this job's not for you. Because you're actually not meeting the requirements of the job. So you need to go link these things back and then say, well, hey, I'm in control here.
Yeah. So each day then, I imagine that you would meet with you'd meet with teams, you would meet maybe with an individual, or probably train HR leaders, besides appearing on radio and TV.
Yes, I do a lot of Zoom calls globally with people and help guide them through, the systems and the processes that they need to be looking for. And I think the key one you just said there was HR. And one of the things about HR is that HR, we need to have specifically trained people within HR to be able to address this type of behaviour, because it's very intentional and these people have got this informal power. So we need to have people who are well skilled to be able to then break down the conversation and be able to take control back over the situation. Because, as I said before, they're a conductor and they've got, their band of, their orchestra together. So you need to be able to sort of drill right down and find what the root cause of the situation is. So it does take some time and it does take some skill, and I coach people on that as well, on how they can work their way through that to get the best outcome at the end of the day. So I can sort of sit beside people as their mentor. But I do travel globally as well and work with organisations. So, recently we were on a holiday, so I met with my clients in Antwerp and did some work with them over there. So it's and I think this is the beautiful thing about it, is that Zoom itself means that we can, be very proactive in meeting with people and helping them navigate their way through what upward bullying is and the systems and processes that they need to be put into place to have the right conversations around it.
Okay, so let's go for a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the solution, something that you call tranquil leadership. But let's go for a break.
The home of inspiration every day.
Most people give up on themselves easily. You know the human spirit is powerful.
From news,
countries across the globe have been hit by the COVID-19 virus.
Views.
There's a global trend to see an increase in GBV incidences, specifically domestic violence.
Sports.
What do you say? It's a really good ball. It's Shabalala.
And music to inspire you every day. This is Vuka Online, your inspiration radio station.
Welcome back. You're listening to Healthcare Hour with Colleen Qvist. My guest today is Maureen Kyne. She is a global expert on the subject of upward bullying, and she has had an interesting background all the way from nursing into construction and then into supplying to healthcare, so very different. And currently works with leadership all over the world on this topic of upward bullying. So, you've obviously gone to sit with them, you realize what you're doing. So just before we close, what kind of approach do you have to how do we fix it now? How do we rectify it?
I think one of the key things that we need to go back and look at, what is the documentation we've got in place? So one is that what's included in our policy? What's the actual does our policy include the various types of bullying? And that should include upward bullying, and then training and education is around that. So all of the training and education I do, and say respect in the workplace or appropriate conversations, it is included in that, and making sure if it's a policy, a behaviour guide that you've got, that it is included, people are trained on it. The next part is actually looking at whole complaints handling process. So if somebody, particularly in a leadership role, who feels like, oh my God, this is where I'm at, they need to be able to have a safe place to be able to talk it through to people who understand what upward bullying is. And then we're able then to go through, navigating their way through an investigation, because it's not just a straight out, hey, we're going to handle this complaint. We need to have the right processes in place so that we can navigate our way through conducting an investigation that is making it safe for the leader in that particular situation. It's a really important aspect. But also then the leader, and I think it's really important to educate leaders on what upward bullying is. So, running a separate workshops around this, and then saying, all right, well, no, you've heard the Chinese whispers, you've heard this and you heard that. These are the type of conversations. So it's almost like giving them a couple of scripts that they learn, that they feel comfortable in. And, my business partner, who passed away 13 years ago, was an extraordinary woman. And one of the things that we talk about is in my role. So in my role as your manager, we're going to have a discussion around this. So we're not talking about it as I'm the num or I'm Maureen. In my role as your manager, we need to set up a discussion around this. So it actually helps them take that control back over their role itself, because these perpetrators have got this informal power, so they're feeling helpless. So it's giving the leaders the skills into being able to have the conversation and have it with confidence, or being able to reach out to HR or the mentor that they've got to say, hey, I've just got my back up against the wall. Can you give me 10 minutes so that it'll help me, prepare me to go in to have that conversation with confidence, because their confidence is shattered when this happens over a period of time.
Because it's erosion.
That's erosion. And that's like that little red car that gets smashed every day going through the potholes. Because you can constantly doing this slalom down the road, to avoid all the potholes. So you're exhausted. Yeah. And I think that's, when people do, and this is the interesting, when people come to me, they're just completely shattered. And it's too late for them. Most of the time they end up leaving the organisation, and that's sad as well, because we've lost a huge, a valuable talent from the organisation because of that. So we need to start looking at being proactive and being able to address what these type of behaviours are, and that they're not going to be acceptable.
Yeah, and to prevent it, as opposed to having the burnout of people in it.
Correct. Absolutely.
To also let's work together. How are we going to work together? So would you say then that upward bullying has always been there, or is it starting to become more prevalent?
Look, it has always been there, but I think particularly COVID changed the dynamics considerably. I was starting to see that there was a shift in behaviour around I can't even think the right word at the moment, entitlement. So that was happening before COVID, and because I said to Suze, 15 years ago, I said to Suze, bullying's going to cripple businesses in 10 years. So we're another 5 years on top of that. And so I've been working in this space for all of this time, but I've just seen a massive shift in the employees taking this informal power. And COVID has really brought that out. And because even in healthcare, you've still got people who can work from home. So you've got those two different balances of, those that have to be at work 24/7 and those that are working from home. So you have a disconnect even within the organization about how people show up for work as well.
Yeah.
So we've got those, and have we articulated well enough too the actual job role of that person so that we can have a conversation around tasks that aren't being performed, to the standard.
So for people listening to us from all over the world, they might, I think, oh, maybe not. Are they able to have a conversation with you?
Absolutely. We've got, for them, they can reach out on LinkedIn. And so we have LinkedIn as one avenue. We've also set up a community membership, where people can join this membership, and then they've got access to me all of the time in that membership. And so they can be asking questions. But then if they want extra one-on-one time or want, time,
Coaching.
coaching for the business and things like that, then we can have discussions around that. But reach out on LinkedIn first, and either myself or my staff will make contact and set up appointments and so forth and things like that. But we do encourage those that are in leadership roles to join the community, and we do have a special offer for them, and we can give that, Colleen can send that out to people who want to join that membership at a VIP rate as well.
Okay. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, so I think it's important for everybody out there to see that they're not alone.
True.
Somebody will listen. Somebody does understand what they're going through, and that they do have a safe space to be able to talk.
Absolutely. And that's the key. It's having that safe place to be
Yes.
able to sort of talk to me in confidence about what is going on, because what they share with me is held in confidence. And so that therefore, they themselves are not then going to be worrying about where does this go at the end of the day.
Okay, Maureen, you see the time goes by so quickly. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your expertise with us.
Well, thank you. It's been a real joy, and I just are so passionate about healthcare, and just to be able to help people in healthcare is just a beautiful way, to spend a Friday afternoon.
Yeah. Well, we certainly bond in that point of view of how important healthcare is and how misunderstood healthcare professionals are.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you. All
My
right,
pleasure.
you've been listening to Healthcare Hour with Colleen Qvist. Please remember that you are loved, you matter, and you're not alone. And I'll be with you next week.